Remember that old saying, be kind, rewind? Well, folks, the first 5 episodes, you have been kind, and you have listened to Retro Wrestling Rewind. But you thought the first 5 episodes were great. You ain't heard nothing yet. Episode number 6 may be the best one yet, as we cover SummerSlam 1998. Welcome in to Retro Wrestling Rewind, episode number 6, folks. We are glad that we are going to put you over that hump. And we know how people have the Mondays, but sometimes people get a case of the Wednesdays. So we're pushing you over that hump for episode number 6. As always, I am one half of the greatest broadcast team in the history of this great sport. I am David Fine, alongside my tag team partner, Alex G. Man, welcome into episode 6, Alex.
What's going on, man?
I mean, we're talking 1988 SummerSlam. I mean, it was actually a really good show. What are your thoughts kind of going in, leading up to SummerSlam 88?
Well, SummerSlam 88 is one of those shows that will go down in history. It's the very first SummerSlam, which makes it very important. It also takes place from Madison Square Garden, the home of the WWF. I think overall, it's a pretty good show. Some will call it a one-match show. Perhaps that's the case. But again, you got to understand that it's 1988, and pay-per-views are structured a little bit differently than they are today. But you know, we have the big feud at the end where the Mega Powers are taking on the Mega Bucks.
I mean, it was a relatively good show. I mean, the commentating team of Gorilla Monsoon and Superstar Billy Graham.
Superstar Billy Graham being a fantastic, promo, a fantastic interview, and a fantastic all-around talker. You would assume that he would be fantastic on commentary, much like Jesse. I think they were going for the face version of Jesse Ventura. I think it was the idea here. Now, I've seen Superstar do announcing on other shows. I think he did a couple of Madison Square Garden shows, and he seemed to be fine on those. This show in particular, he's a little bit amped up. Again, with the brother, a little over the top with that. But if you get past all that, his insights are actually pretty decent. Again, he's no Jesse Ventura, but there's not many people who are. And not for nothing, he's still better than Coach or Brian Saxton. So he gets a thumbs up from me, in terms of his commentary, because he's so much better than the commentary that we see today. But it can get a little jarring and a little grating and hearing his voice like that. But again, I've seen him in other shows where he did okay. I don't think he did. I went back looking for it. I don't think he did any Superstars or Challenge. I think he just primarily did MSG house shows when he did commentary. But I think if they would have gave him, a couple more chances at it, I think he would have been pretty good. This is his only appearance on pay-per-view as an announcer, and it takes time for these guys. Does anyone remember Taz? How awful Taz was on commentary when he first started. And
he actually ended up. He's actually a good commentator now. So.
Yeah, he actually evolved and learned over time and became a really, really good commentator. I think if they gave Superstar Graham some more opportunities, he may have done better with it. But again, it's also Superstar Billy Graham, and his relationship with the McMahons overall has his up and his down, peaks and valleys. I think they're currently not talking to each other once again. So.
Yeah, I mean that seems to happen a lot with the McMahons. But speaking of we're going to go into the card. It's we have 10 matches, of course, with the main event, the Mega Powers versus the Mega Bucks. That was actually a really good match. Kind of talk about the non-wrestling event that happened at SummerSlam was an edition of the Brother Love show. And of course, everyone assumed that the Nature Boy Ric Flair was going to be making his World Wrestling Federation debut. But we all know that did not happen. So, of course.
That's a very important story, and I'll tell you why. And it goes to the overall arcing, kind of history of his relationship with Jim Herd and WCW, and his relationship with Jim Crockett currently. Now, Jim Crockett and Ric Flair right now are not on the best of terms. And it's due to this. So in the summer of 1988, obviously Ric Flair's contract has come up. He's always been in contact with the WWF, but he went back to Crockett and basically said, make me a deal. Now, by this time, I'm pretty sure that Jim Crockett knew that he was selling to Ted Turner and the Turner organization. Now, part of that deal for Turner to buy the WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions at the time, is that they had to have Flair under contract. They did not have Flair under contract, they wouldn't have bought GACP. It just wouldn't have happened. So, Flair being, really great friend with Jim Crockett, he wants to see the NWA do well. It's his home, and it's really important to him. He took a pay cut to stay in Jim Crockett Promotions, because he understood that, hey, money is tight right now, the attendance is not great, so he took less money. But Jim Crockett already knew that he was selling to Turner, so he could have paid Flair 3 times what he was making, or at the very least kept them at the same rate. But he didn't. So that's why Flair's still kind of hot at Jim Crockett, because he could have went over the WWF, especially in 1988, where they're ascending. 89 is a really fantastic year for WWF. So Flair's not a happy camper here, and then I think it would lead to a lot of his problems in WCW going forward, knowing that in the back of his mind, and then having to deal with Jim Herd.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that he was going to come and be on the Brother Love show. And of course, they ended up having Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or as
now is he back? Is this his first appearance back? So I'm not 100% sure, because as you may remember, he got caught driving the car with the Iron Sheik, and Duggan had beer and some weed, and Iron Sheik had some cocaine, and they were fired. This is like right after WrestleMania 3. So Duggan's been gone for quite a while now. He does make an appearance. It's not his first appearance back, but he does make an appearance back probably earlier in '88, and he comes back because he's definitely at WrestleMania 4. So it's kind of odd not having Duggan here in a match. But, if you need someone to have a segment, and he's talking about his feud with Dino Bravo, again, it's weird, because shouldn't he just be in a match with Dino Bravo?
You would think. I mean, and we later on in another episode, we'll kind of talk about, what happened, eventually happened to Dino Bravo, Canadian's strongest man. His fate did not end well, but we'll go into a different, that's kind of a different topic. We'll go into kind of the deaths of people, earlier in their career. But I mean, the attendance was 20,000. It was, of course, in your backyard, in your hometown. You were about 2 years old back then?
1988, I would have been 6.
Oh, so you were into the great sport of professional wrestling back then, 1988?
I was watching semi-regularly, because I went to a show in 87, right before WrestleMania 3. But I didn't start watching wrestling until late 88, early 89. I was basically all in. I started buying magazines, and I was all the way in. At this point, I'm kind of just flirting with the aspects of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I started watching wrestling in 1985. I was a big Jim Crockett Promotions at NWA, mark. They didn't. I don't think they had. I didn't know the word mark back then, but I guess I was an NWA mark. But speaking of the matches, let's start out. We had the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, taking on the fabulous Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond, which it ended in a 20-minute time limit draw. Which, I mean, it is what it is. But the funny,
what stands out to me in this match is the Dynamite Kid. Now, the Dynamite Kid is post his career. It's not ending industry, but his injury that he had prior to this, that pretty much made him not the Dynamite Kid anymore. So this match in particular here, he looks pretty good. This is probably the best we'll see him at this point, moving forward. So, obviously his body starts to break down after this, but right now in this match, in this 20-minute draw with the Rougeaus, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, man, it was a good match. But the thing we were talking about earlier offline about how the Rougeau brothers, they were already, they didn't have an entrance. And you found that kind of weird that, at a big, at their first big show in SummerSlam 88, that you would think they would both have introductions, but it was only the British Bulldogs. I mean, what do you think their reason for that was? They just, my opinion is that if a team's already in the ring, they're kind of enhancement talent.
Yeah, they're jobbers.
But I mean,
I don't think they had their theme song yet. They had it at WrestleMania 5. That's for sure. The All American Boys theme song that they sung themselves, that Jimmy Hart produced. So they didn't have that yet. They're pretty early in their heel run here. So they were a babyface team prior to this. A lot of people don't remember that, and they started saying, "Hey, you're getting don't treat us like Dino Bravo. We're not like Dino Bravo. We're All American Boys."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was like it's a weird the way they transitioned from face to heel is very subtle over an extended period of time, but eventually they just got with Jimmy Hart and just became full-fledged heels.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird. I mean, they kind of made the funny assumption. They had the small American flags, and that they were from Canada, but they're going to make their residence in the United States and
Memphis, Tennessee.
It was just it was a 20-minute match. I mean, it was a good way to open up the event. The second match we had Bad News Brown taking on Ken Patera. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of Ken Patera. Bad News Brown. I mean, I can take him or leave him. What were your thoughts on this match? It went 6 minutes and 33 seconds.
This is basically the end of Ken Patera, I think, as in terms of being on pay-per-view, in terms of being a wrestler of any sort. Again, after his prison sentence, when he came back, he didn't do anything good. Now, Ken Patera, 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84 is fantastic. Former Intercontinental Champion, what have you. At this stage of his career, again, he's not as big as he once was. He probably got off the enhancers, and he just looks like someone's uncle. He doesn't look like a wrestler.
Yeah,
he's kind of just there. And after the Heenan stuff that he did with Heenan, there wasn't much for him left to do. So they put him in a match with Bad News Brown, who Bad News is ascending up the card. Again, eventually he'll be feuding with Macho Man Randy Savage over the WWE Championship, which is a great angle, by the way, and it's an often forgotten angle. I love that angle. So he's ascending. Patera is basically on his way out. I don't think he stays too much longer after this anyway.
Yeah, man, I will have to go into deep dive into that Bad News Brown Macho Man Savage angle on a future show. But the next match, match 3, had Rick Rude taking on the Junkyard Dog. It was with and Rick Rude had Bobby the Brain Heenan. It was funny. I was watching the network today, and I was watching some old Mid-Atlantic, and it had Rick Rude, but it was Roode. It was the same Rick Rude, but just a different spelling of his name. It's interesting how he went from kind of enhancement talent to kind of a semi-main event, at big shows. What were your thoughts on this match?
It's funny with Rude. He kind of went from a guy that was really shitty in the ring, and we all saw it would be, in Mid-South or even in early his early stages in Crockett, before he had to go to Memphis to learn to finally embrace his character and be the Rick Rude that we all know and love. What's curious about this match is how come it's not Rick Rude versus Jake Roberts?
Yeah, I mean, because he had that feud where he had Jake Roberts' wife's face on his crotch, on his tights. I don't understand. I don't even. I understand that they just had a match at WrestleMania 4 that ended, I believe, in a time limit draw. In the tournament, but they were feuding at that point. And I don't understand. I mean, Jake's on this card, but he's facing Hercules.
He makes an appearance in this match. He comes at the end after Rude pulls down his trunks and you see Cheryl Roberts, and then Jake Roberts comes out and starts stirring shit. But why is this not the match? Again, they're kind of treating this overall card like they would MSG house show. It's very similar in the way it's laid out, because a lot of these matches are not, there's no angles attached to them. And I understand that it kind of, that's the way it was at this point, but it's like there's no stakes in any of these matches.
Yeah, I mean, it was. You would think that they would treat their first ever SummerSlam with a little bit more upscale, and they would have some angles. But the next match, Powers of Pain, the Barbarian and the Warlord, with their manager, the Baron, or Baron von Raschke, taking on the Bolsheviks, Borsukov, Nikolai Volkov, with a Doctor style slick. It was was a 5-minute and 27-minute match. The Bolsheviks didn't get in much offense on this match. What were your thoughts on this? I mean, and having Baron von Raschke as their manager.
It's just weird seeing the Powers Pain as baby faces. That's different.
Yeah.
Again, they're going for the whole Road Warrior ripoff thing here. They got the Baron with them. Why, I don't know. They would get rid of him not too much longer after this. So it just seems like, the Powers of Pain are pretty new. They're coming in with a strong victory over the Bolsheviks. But poor Nikolai Volkov, he used to be higher on the card, and now he's like, ooh. His descending is staggering.
He is descending. And the next match it was a big build-up. It was supposed to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake, or as Conrad Thompson calls him, Brutus or what does he call him? Brutus the Barber. Or he says something.
Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake.
Yes, thank you. I knew I'd get it wrong. He was supposed to take on the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title. He got hurt in a storyline angle the week before. So of course they built up. They didn't, the Honky Tonk Man said, Mean Gene, I will face anybody that they put against me. And it comes to be that it was the Ultimate Warrior. It was a 31-second match, and I was thinking, why the hell did they have such a short match? And you want to kind of explain to everyone listening why they had such a short match?
So according to the Honky Tonk Man, again, I watch and listen to a lot of street interviews. So according to the Honky Tonk Man, it was his idea to go that short. Number one, he wouldn't have to be in the ring with the Ultimate Warrior very long. It's lessening his chance to get injured by the Ultimate Warrior. And two, he felt that losing in 31 seconds the way he did would have kept them strong. Because it wasn't necessarily a fluke, but it was a situation where, hey, Honky's not even out of his gear. The match kind of got jump-started. He wasn't ready for the Ultimate Warrior. He didn't prepare for the Ultimate Warrior. So it was a much easier story to tell when they did the return matches, which they did. They went around the horn and had return matches. So, again, it's just pretty smart on the Honky Tonk Man's part here. And, again, it makes a really big SummerSlam moment here. Again, we've seen this moment over and over. Would it be on WWE retrospectives and DVDs that Warrior comes in and obliterates the Honky Tonk Man, who at the time was the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time? I think he still has that record, although he may not have the record in terms of overall days. I think he still has the record in consecutive days. But for the Ultimate Warrior to be the guy that figured out 1,000 different ways not to be beat, really pushed Ultimate Warrior to the next level.
I mean, what are your thoughts on Ultimate Warrior? I mean, coming in, doing this, and then the Honky, and we'll kind of talk about the Honky Tonk Man, but what are your thoughts on the Warrior? I mean,
it's funny that I was listening to something that Harley Race had said the other day, and he said that the Ultimate Warrior was portraying a Native American gimmick. And I'm looking at the Ultimate Warrior, at first I'm like, no way. The more I look at him, I'm like, maybe he has a point. Even if you watch some of the earlier Ultimate Warrior promos when he's talking about the moon and the stars and coyotes and that kind of stuff, and even he got a promo here. I don't know if you had it on your version because I watched the Silver Vision, the UK version. He had a promo after he won the belt, and again, it's a very different Ultimate Warrior promo that maybe people are not used to. But Harley Race says he was playing a Native American gimmick, and you can kind of see that with the war paint and the tassels, and even the comeback is kind of reminiscent to Strongbow. So it's like maybe he has a point there.
Yeah, I mean, in my network version that I watched, they had an interview with Honky Tonk Man, and he was irate. He said, and then they had the one in the babyface locker room with the Ultimate Warrior, and he said he was going to the stars and moon and to this all that kind of crap. But so the version that you watched was the UK version. Tell everyone, I mean, what was the difference between that version and maybe something that people would see on the network, or maybe if they had a...
Well, here's the thing. This is what's supposed to be different. Again, there's different versions of a lot of these early pay-per-views floating around. The reason why I bought all of these Silver Vision versions of these, because they were unedited. So they had the correct music. There's no blurred out WWF, and there were DVD quality. So these are DVDs.
Okay.
The United States version at the time had they were super heavily edited. I've seen even events. I've seen a WrestleMania 6 that had no commentary from Jesse Ventura on it. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen different versions of these shows, and me being a completist, I need to get all. You know what I mean? So, but I do prefer the silver version or Coliseum home video versions to most of these early pay-per-views because they are unedited. Now, the WWE Network version is supposed to be the pay-per-view broadcast version. So whatever was broadcast on the team was supposed to be unedited, 100% ready to go. Sometimes there's different segments in them.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the Coliseum video or Silvervision would have an extra promo here or a different promo there. It's a slightly different show. The matches are essentially the same. Sometimes the Coliseum video version will splice matches up, so they'll be edited for time. Mm-hmm. There's a couple really, really, really like. There's one. WrestleMania 6 is probably one of the. I think it's the Coco Beware Rick Martel match, which is heavily edited. Like they go right to the finish. I'm like, that match is like 10 minutes long. What's happening?
And the edited version is what, 3 minutes long?
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of a match that they probably should just have edited out and not even had, the Canadian Strongest Man, Dino Bravo, with the great, and I say that sarcastically, Frenchie Martin, defeated the magnificent Don Morocco in 5 minutes and 28 seconds. Your thoughts on the match between Don Morocco and Dino Bravo?
Again, this is like almost the ending for Don Morocco in the WWF. He wouldn't stay too much longer. I don't think he's at Survivor Series. I think he's gone. But again, this is Dino Bravo. He's been in for a while. He's someone that's also going to be ascending to the top of the card. He's going to be feuding with, Warrior and Hogan with when he teams up with Earthquake, which, comes the following year. Again, it's just like, this is the WWF peak in terms of performance enhancers. And you look at Don Morocco, who could barely walk and he can't get his arms down at all at this point. You look at Dino Bravo, who is jacked, like he's not built like you would think, abs, big muscle. He just looks swollen. You know what I mean? So he looks swollen. So this is like your steroidy kind of match here, and it's not good. Bravo gets the victory here. Again, Morocco's on his way out. Bravo's on his way up. So, and
unfortunately, 4 years later, Dino Bravo died. So it was, that was just a weird.
He was executed in his home by the Montreal Mafia. Again, he was in he was in the Montreal Mafia, and he was dealing with untaxed bootleg cigarettes, from what I understand.
I wonder if he was doing this back in 1988. I would assume he did just fall into that and just start up as he didn't go to trade school and say,
well,
hey.
You understand this, that Dino was the promoter of record in Montreal when they sold to the WWF. So, again, sometimes these promoters, they have to deal with, with shady characters. Even Vince McMahon, there were some people that are on his payroll that, if you look back, like, he looked like he was connected, and he looked like he was connected, and Bruno's hanging out with mafia dudes, in Midtown Manhattan, in the 60s. There's a connection there, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those matches they could have probably just said, let's go straight to the finish.
I agree. They shouldn't even have the freaking match.
No, and the next match was for
it should have been Dino versus Hacksaw, which on paper may not sound like a better match, but trust me, 1988 Hacksaw, by the way, who's fantastic. He was still pretty good. He's coming off of Mid-South still. Mm-hmm. And if you guys watch, 86, 87 Mid-South, and you watch Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw him, I think it was 83 Mid-South, and he was actually really, really good. I think I forgot who. I think
of the Bruiser Brody ripoffs, he's probably the best one.
Yeah, and I'm a big Bruiser Brody fan. Well, I'll definitely have to delve into him later on. But the next match was for the WWF Tag Team Championship. It was Demolition, Axe, and Smash with Mr. Fuji and Jimmy Hart taking on the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And this is kind of after the Hart Foundation split with Jimmy Hart, and they were they're going babyface. What were your thoughts on this match?
Well, I think it was about time that the Hart Foundation went babyface. I like the way they did it too, because they had, Jimmy Hart to feud with. Now Jimmy Hart still owns a piece of their contract, and eventually, it's not stated here, but eventually when Hart and the Rougeau brothers, Jimmy Hart sells the contract to the Rougeau brothers. So now every time the Hart Foundation wrestles a match, they have to give money to the Rougeau brothers, which drives them freaking insane.
Oh, Jimmy Hart. He's not.
Again, he's here with Michifuji to give the Demolition inside scoop on the Hart Foundation so they can beat him.
Yeah, and I was watching another Mid-Atlantic episode today, and had the Anvil Jim Neidhart. He was definitely different looking back then. He was looking as crazy as he was back in 1988. But I mean, it was a good match. I mean, I'm not. Are you surprised that the Harts didn't win? Or are you surprised? Are you not surprised that Demolition defeated them?
I don't. Here's the thing: if they didn't have that Bret Hart singles run at this point, because you got to remember this is 1988. They're trying to split Bret off this early. Like they want Bret to go singles. Bret wants to go singles. So that's why you saw that angle at WrestleMania 4 where Bret broke the trophy and he's having like these heel and heel matches with Bad News Brown, and eventually he does turn babyface. So I don't think they were thinking to put the belts on the Harts here, because they were kind of focusing on they're trying to figure out a way to get Bret to go single.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big. What are your thoughts on Bret Hart? I mean, now that you see it's 2018 in his career. I mean, he doesn't wrestle anymore. What are your thoughts? I mean, back then and to now on Bret Hart.
I was a huge Bret Hart fan. I was drawing pictures of Bret with a WWE championship as early as 1990. So I have like a book report that I did at school that I handed in that has a picture of Bret Hart on it with the belt. So I was big into Bret. I thought Bret was a fantastic worker. And I understand a lot of there's criticisms. And I guess the biggest criticism of him is that he takes wrestling way too serious, and he has like shrines of himself in his home and stuff like that. But in today's day and age, to be completely honest, I think a lot of wrestlers can learn from Bret and take wrestling a little bit more serious. I'm not saying to go full Bret Hart and be nuts, but he grew up the son of a promoter. So again, he's a different outlook than a lot of these guys. Now, in terms of his matches, I know a lot of people say, oh, Bret wrestles the same match. He has the same 5 moves over and over again. And that's true to an extent, but every wrestler's like that. You look at Flair, you look at Hogan, look at John Cena, Roman Reigns. Take your pick. They're always going to have their 5 or 6 signature moves. These guys are wrestling 300 nights a year. So not every match is going to be a 5-star classic. In terms of Bret, he had great matches with a lot of different people. His first WWF title run, where they tried to make him into like the most hardest working champion of all time, and they had him like on every show, and he's wrestling. He's going as low into the mid cards. He's wrestling Skinner on pay-per-view. It's like they're doing stuff with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of his. I mean, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, he was a great worker. He kind of. I'm sure you're not a big fan of the Total Diva show, but he made some mini appearances on there before his passing. He seemed kind of go off the wagon, but that's just. I mean, it's probably a lot of bumps to the head, but that's just.
Jim Neidhart is insane. I don't know Jim Neidhart. I'm assuming that he's a good dude, looks like a great dad. That kind of stuff. He does also look completely out of his goddamn mind. And he's been arrested for drug possession and stuff too. And he was someone that Bret had to babysit a lot of times. Again, that was one of the reasons Bret wanted to go single. So maybe he didn't have to babysit Jim anymore. Well,
yeah. I mean, we know how that ended up. I mean, he went his singles way, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart he went bye-bye. The next match had a man from Cobb County, Georgia, corrections officer, Big Boss Man, with, once again, the Dr. Style Slick, taking on...
I love Slick, by the way.
Yeah, I love Slick, but taking on a man who has a bird, the Birdman, Coco Beware. This is kind of Boss Man's... He was early in his WWF career, correct? I mean, he hadn't been there. I mean, before that, he had been in Jim Crockett Promotions, had been just Big Bubba, the bodyguard of Jim Cornette.
Not only the bodyguard of Jim Cornette, but he's also having matches with Dusty Rhodes. He had a fantastic match at Starrcade with Ron Garvin. He's having matches with Ole Anderson. So he was pretty high up on the card in terms of Crockett.
Yeah.
And he's essentially a rookie, and he's still a rookie at this point. So he's very green. So he's coming into the WWF, with a big push right off the bat. He's getting the victory here over Coco Beware. They do beat the hell out of him with the nightstick, which that's what he did. Post match, and they haven't teamed up with Akeem yet. I believe Akeem is still the one man gang at this point. So that segment's insane. By the way, you ever seen the transformation of the one man gang turned into Akeem?
Yes, I think in today's standards, it may be a little bit not PC, but I thought. Then they became the.
I think Akeem is perfectly acceptable television today and back then. You know what's not perfectly acceptable television?
The Twin Towers. No.
Well, yeah. Well, the name perhaps not, but in late 1990, it was going to be Akeem taking on Saba Simba to see who was the greatest black wrestler from Africa. That would have not flew today.
No. It would.
You ever seen Akeem's Arsenio Hall appearance?
No. Was it?
That's amazing because it's slick. It is Akeem, the African Dream. It's Boss Man, and it's Arsenio Hall. And with a straight face, Slick has to tell Arsenio Hall that Akeem is going to be the first black WWF champion. And Arsenio just looks confused.
Yeah, it was. I have to go YouTube that, but
that is hilarious.
It was. Of course, superstar Billy Graham kept on saying that. Oh, Jack Tunney, the president of the WWF, needs to suspend him for his actions he had because he had handcuffs and he had a billy club. I don't know.
Can we talk about the greatness of Coco Beware not in the WWF? Because he was fantastic in Memphis, and he's actually really good in Mid-South. PYT Express is freaking awesome. Unfortunately here, a lot of people have to realize when they look at some of these guys that Vince McMahon's mid-card was everyone else's main events. Yeah. So although Coco could go, and Coco could cut a great promo, Coco was good in the ring. He was on the small side, but pretty jacked for a smaller dude. Had an incredible drop kick. The Ghostbuster, which is his version of the Brainbuster, is fantastic. He has the bird. He's pushed pretty good. He's singing on Pile Driver. They're doing some really good stuff for him at first, and then eventually he just turns into a jobber.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and of course, if you. Speaking of different shows and different things that you want us to cover, you can go to our brand new website. It's retrowrestlingrewind.com. It is live right now as this episode drops here on Wednesday. You can also go to the RW Rewind. That's Retro Wrestling Rewind on Twitter. And if there's an angle, if there is a promotion, if there is a tag team, if there's a singles wrestler you want us to cover, just send us a tweet or send us an email on retrowrestlingrewind.com, and we will get back with you. And because there is so much that we could cover, and we could cover Coco Beware's career. We kind of have a couple of.
You can have me talk for 45 minutes about the greatness of the Dungeon of Doom.
You could talk about the Dungeon of Doom for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Please, folks, do not suggest us talk about the Dungeon of Doom. That was
they had monster trucks.
Yeah, but it involved Kevin Sullivan, so that's what I'm just.
And monster trucks, it's freaking awesome.
Anyway, that's
the Yeti.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Alrighty, moving on to a match that should not have happened because they should have had this guy against Dino Bravo, or no, yeah. Oh, sorry, Rick Rude. Jake the Snake Roberts taking on Hercules.
This is pre-slavery Hercules, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Bobby Heenan eventually sells Hercules into slavery to the $1 Million Man not too long after this. And you notice that he's not at ringside with Hercules, kind of teasing that a little bit. So eventually he does sell Hercules to slavery, and Hercules has to win his freedom, which is a weird angle to do.
Which, selling it to the $1 Million Man, he's already got Virgil, which I've told the story on the show before, but I'll say it again. We're at WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans, and my buddy Ryan Kayafa and I went to the casino in New Orleans. We were just walking through. We didn't bet anything because it was kind of late, but we saw the very lonely Virgil at the craps table by himself or it was one of those craps or one of those tables, and it just looked sad. He was in his gym shorts. I mean, what were your thoughts on his gimmick with $1 Million Man? And then you had Hercules, who got sold. He got sold into slavery to the $1 Million Man. I mean, who the hell was booking this shit?
That'd be Vince. It was Vince and Pat, and JJ's not in yet, so it's just Vince and Pat at this point. I can see Vince being like, "Goddamn, pal, you gonna sell him into slavery? It's good heat."
My God, that I don't know. That's
probably one of the worst angles of. And I often defend the '80s. I'm very nostalgic for it. I love '80s wrestling in general, overall.
I mean, that's why we do.
This is cringy as fuck.
I mean,
that's just what it is.
I mean, this is why we do a retro wrestling podcast, because we both love the retro. I mean, the product today is, I mean, you could live with it. You could go with it.
I say this once, and I say it 1,000 times. I'm in love with the WWE's current roster. If I was building a wrestling promotion, 90% of those people would be on my roster, right? I love their roster.
Yeah, I mean they got a great.
Everything else is the drizzling shits. I'm not afraid to say it. A lot of people will say, you shouldn't criticize it. You hear it on Twitter that wrestling's an art form and it's subjective. Yeah, I get that, but bad wrestling is bad wrestling.
I mean,
that's the way it is.
I mean, the stuff we talk about on this show, it's not sports entertainment. They call it professional wrestling. I mean, it just bugs the crap out of me that they call it sports entertainment. I mean, they only call it sports entertainment in the WWE, but that's just, I don't know. But it's one of those things that
the only reason they call it sports entertainment is they don't have to pay the commissions license and pay taxes on it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why they started using that term.
Well, that's neither here nor there. That's another edition of Retro Wrestling Rewind. The main event, going on to the main event, had the mega powers of Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage with the lovely Miss Elizabeth. They defeated the Mega Bucks, Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, with Bobby Heenan and Virgil in a whopping 14 minutes and 43 seconds.
How much money do you think Jesse Ventura was paid for this match? Kayfabe.
I'd say 60,000.
60,000. Okay.
Well, I mean, do you have a number?
I don't have a firm number, but he was definitely paid off by the $1 Million Man. Now, if you look at Jesse Ventura, again, the whole angle coming into this, again, we have Hogan and Savage. They form the Mega Powers. They're going to fight the Mega Buck, Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, right? I think everyone is fully aware of that. And then the side angle is that, Ted DiBiase is going to pay off the special guest referee, which is Jesse with the Body Ventura. So they did the whole segment on the Brawl Love show where he's sticking $100 bills in his jacket, but Jesse the entire time is like, no, I'm gonna be fair and impartial. I'm gonna be fair and impartial, and not for nothing. Throughout this match, other than the finish, he's pretty fair and impartial.
Yeah,
like he doesn't do anything outwardly to kind of screw the baby faces here. He does the weird thing at the beginning of matches where he changes the tag ropes from the different corners, which is weird. I guess to just assert his authority. And he gets on Liz's case every once in a while. He gets on Virgil's case every once in a while. But for the most part, he calls it fair and square. Now, again, when we go to the finish here and he goes to 1, 2, and then he stops, and then Savage has to help him get the third countdown, that's the only thing that looks kind of iffy. But for the most part, he plays it pretty straight.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, for a main event, I thought it was really good. I mean, overall, what were your thoughts on SummerSlam 88, the very first?
Well, we missed the most important spot of that match.
Oh, yeah, it involved Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, so now Miss Elizabeth, who hasn't taken any bumps for the most part, hasn't done anything physical in the ring other than getting shoved down by Honky Tonk Man, which was the year prior. But for the most part, she's been as classy and as beautiful as you can be. She's never used her sexual powers for evil or for good. Now she gets up on the apron here and then just takes off her skirt. Huh. And then everyone is mesmerized, and I don't necessarily blame them.
Yeah.
And then Hogan and Savage do the Mega Powers handshake, and they're off and running, and that's the 1, 2, 3 after what did they do, the leg drop, then the elbow, or the elbow, then the leg drop? I forget how that sequence went, but
Either or. It was a great ending. You got to see.
And plus, Hulk Hogan touched Elizabeth's butt, which caused controversy down the road because Savage was right.
Yeah, we'll go into that in another show. It kind of started dissension between the Mega Powers, with Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan.
This, I guess, is the first thing you see, because I think the first thing that Macho says is like Hogan with his arms around him, giving him a big hug. Yeah. And that's the first. They're planning to see as early as SummerSlam here for a WrestleMania main event, which is, I think, to this day, is the greatest angle of all time, bar none. I think some people will say Austin McMahon. I say Hogan and Savage, just slightly above, not by much, just slightly above.
Yeah, it was definitely a great angle. It's one of those things. If that's an angle that you would like us to cover on Retro Wrestling Rewind, just go to RetroWrestlingRewind.com and send us an email. There's a contact button up there, which is the website is live right now here on Wednesday when the episodes drop. Now it's kind of your hump day, push over that hump and kind of go on the downhill turn to the weekend. Tomorrow's going to be Thursday, Friday. We'll be back on the weekend, and then we'll be back a week from Wednesday for another edition of Retro Wrestling Rewind. But what were your thoughts, overall, a 1 out of 10, a kind of a Meltzer number? What was your thoughts on SummerSlam 1988, the first edition of SummerSlam for WWF?
If I want to say objectively, this show was probably around a 5. But you throw a little nostalgia juice on it, it's like a 7, 8, 9. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, a lot of people think that, for example, my favorite show is the best show. Now, you have to look objectively at these things that, hey, you like something, but you have to understand that it's terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, when I phrase questions, I did a Twitter question today. Is like, I asked everyone, tell me your favorite show, not the best show you've seen, your favorite show. Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
So even though something's your favorite, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. Now, you want to look at these things objectively. Now, for me, I love this show. I've seen the show a million times. I'll tell you a quick story. It's going to be awesome, trust me. So I'm a kid. It's 1989, 1990, around that time frame. As a child, back in the day, you didn't buy tapes very often because tapes were very expensive. Home video releases were extremely expensive back in the day. I'm talking about upwards of $30, $40, $50, $60 to buy one of these, right? Very expensive. So what kids of the 80s and early 90s, you know what they did a lot? They went to their local video store. They went to their Hollywood videos. They went to their Blockbuster, and they rented movies. I rented wrestling events literally almost every weekend. That and a video game historically, the way it went. One game, so it might be Super Mario Brothers 3 and SummerSlam 88. Huh. So for this particular event, I remember going to our local video store. And this was always a weird place to be. We only went there like 2 or 3 times because my dad was creeped out by the owner of the store. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So we go in. It's your typical 80s video store. Wood paneling, videos all over the shelves. You have your gondolas with the videotapes on them too. Historically, it's not like Blockbuster. You would take it would be just in a clear case with the cover on it, kind of cut up, right? They would put those in there. There's a curtain with a back room with your adult videos back there. Everyone knows what that is. But back in the day, I would go rent my videos, and if you're looking for a particular ticket to an event, back in the day, you couldn't order your tickets online, right, for a show. You would either have to go to the box office or find a Ticketmaster. Now, for us, or you could order them over the phone. My father was very anti-credit cards back then. He still is to this day. So we did not have a credit card. So we can call Ticketmaster to get tickets sent to us. So what we had to do was either go to the box office, which we chose not to do because it's a drive, or go to your local video store because historically they would have a Ticketmaster. So we went into this local video store. I want to rent SummerSlam '88. I want to get tickets to the next house show at the Nassau Coliseum. And my dad's talking to the guy behind the counter, and he's like, "Hey, bro, you like wrestling? Your kid likes wrestling?" And he's like, "Yeah." And my dad's kind of looking at him kind of sideways. And back in the day, you got to go through like this binder. It'll tell you the events and where you can see. So we pick out our seats. My dad pays for the tickets. I rent the movie. And this guy talks to me, and he's like, "Hey, listen, we're going to go down on a bus trip down to it was either Baltimore or Philadelphia, right, to see NWA wrestling, right?" So he was just trying to organize a bus trip. And my dad's like, he's looking at this guy. He's like, "No, we're not going to do that. I'm going to send my kid with you," in his head. He told me afterwards. And he kind of is like, he pays for the tickets, grab our video, and we leave. So it seems like a pretty innocuous story, right?
Uh-huh.
I come to find out years later, based on the evidence that I have, and I'm 90% sure this is certain, that was Vince Russo's video store, and I was talking to Vince Russo.
Huh.
Because the location of where his video store is, it's where I would have went to the video store. And the fact that he was talking about wrestling. And he also mentioned something about a radio show, that you should listen to a radio show. And he had a radio show at that time. So all that evidence together makes me believe that was Vince Russo's video store. And my dad was completely creeped out by Vince Russo.
I mean, your dad has sixth sense. I mean, he is kind of a weird guy.
He's a polarizing figure in the community of professional wrestling. And then one day we will have a conversation in long form regarding Vince Russo and the pros and cons of it. Because there's some pros there. It's not all cons.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not cons. But speaking of things that are not con, if people wanted to, of course, they can click on the show notes. Just look below, click on the more, and then it has a show notes, click on. But if they don't have anything to write down or they don't want to click on it, how can someone go to your YouTube channel? I mean, it is so popular. I mean, it's got thousands and thousands of subscribers, thousands and thousands of views. How can they do that?
Well, you just type in Retro Wrestling Games Presents. The first thing that pops up, our latest video, we take a brief look at Puerto Rican wrestling, and we talk about Carlos Colon. We talk about Brie Bella kicking people in the face. And we talk about all kinds of other shenanigans and tomfoolery. So definitely check us out on Retro Wrestling Games Presents. Again, just type that into the search function, the search bar at in YouTube, and make sure that you hit the like button, leave a comment, and hit the subscribe button. And not for nothing, I look at my YouTube channel, right? And they have a stat called interactions, right? Which is your likes, dislikes, and comments, right? And we do pretty good on likes, and we do pretty good on dislikes. By the way, likes and dislikes count the same. So they're not negatives or positives. They count as the same thing. But our comments seem to be low, and I wonder why. Now I'm just going to assume that my opinions are so factually correct that no one can argue with them. I mean, that's my assumption, because no one leaves a negative comment ever. I've never gotten one. No one's ever called me a jerk or an asshole or anything. So I'm just going to assume that my opinions are 100% rock solid, and you can't poke any holes in them. But if you can, please leave a comment.
I mean, I was thinking that your comments or that your commentary was solid, and there's not any water coming through the.
My dad says uneducated opinion is worthless. So you got to keep that in mind. And for me personally, a quick aside here, I see a lot of people on the internet who have podcasts, YouTube shows, or just on Twitter in general, who have like these really bad, garbage hot takes, right? They're hot takes, right? And I don't think they're authentic, right? Because you can't be that ridiculous. So for me, when you're listening to anything that I do, would it be this show here, would it be the stuff I do on YouTube, what you're getting is a 100% authentic opinion, opinion that is educated, right? Mm-hmm. That, I would hope to think that people would assume or even know, listen to the show and find out. If you don't think I know what I'm talking about, go watch the show and find out for yourself. Then maybe you'll figure that out. But for the most part, my opinions are authentic. right? There's no clickbait nonsense. There's no, oh, I want to say something, get some buzz, or they get some retweets or get some likes. They're not going to see none of that nonsense with me, personally.
No, you will not get any of the old clickbait. I mean, and trust me, folks. Alex G, he knows what he's talking about. I mean, I could pose a question about any topic that we're going to cover, and I could just turn off my mic and I could walk away and go, I don't know, go to the supermarket, and I come back and he's still talking, which is
45
good.
minutes, Dungeon of Doom.
Oh God, not the Dungeon. and speaking of things,
I will defend the Dungeon of Doom and RoboCop, by the way.
Are you going to defend RoboCop whenever?
I'm going to defend when we do Capital Combat 90. Yeah, because RoboCop is awesome, and he saves Sting's life.
That's. Folks, I think you should stop listening because this is a terrible podcast. No, I'm just joking. You should keep on listening. You should also watch our YouTube version of the show. It's The Retro Wrestling Rewind. It's on YouTube. Just type in The Retro Wrestling Rewind. Of course, at this time, our last show, we have 5 episodes up, 5 or 6 episodes up on YouTube. They are perfectly edited by the great Alex G. Not me, because I'm great audio editor, video editor, not so much. But the best one, I think, that you've done is the Starrcade 1986. And then one of my friends who watched a couple of the videos said, how in the hell do you get away with putting that stuff on there? I'm like, hey, sometimes we get comments, sometimes we don't. And
it's how you cut and where you cut.
Yep.
It's the tricky part. Although I've gotten feedback that we don't argue enough, that we need to argue with each other more. But like I said, I have such a good opinion that it's hard. I get it.
Trust me. If we talk about the Dungeon of Doom, we'll be arguing, and I'll hate I hate the Dungeon of Doom. And folks, if you want us to talk about the Dungeon of Doom, even though I hate that conversation, tweet us at the RW Rewind on Twitter.
They had Z Gangster in it. It's awesome.
Oh my God! Are we still going? Oh my God, this is terrible, but we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, coming up. You can also go to retrowrestlingrewind.com. On the website, if you, for some strange reason, don't go to YouTube, all the YouTube videos are up there. All of our past episodes, the past 6 episodes, because we're on episode number.
And guys, please share them. We're trying to grow here. We definitely need your help. Hit a like button. Tell a friend. Even if you want to make fun of us, I'll be your punching bag. Trust me.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I grew up being a wrestling fan. You think I've been made fun of my entire life? Are you insane?
Hey, I mean, I get made fun of every day at work because
usually by my wife.
Well, yeah, it's usually by my wife, but that's beside the point. Anyway. I mean, I
do want to do a show on that, on how our wrestling addiction has affected our significant others, because I think that'd be interesting. Insight there. Look at that.
It would be actually. And it's funny. One of my buddies, Ryan Caiafa, who has been on the show and has been on some other shows, his wife, not a fan of wrestling. I will give it to my wife. She will tolerate it. If we have nothing else to watch, I'll say, hey, can I watch something on the network? I'm doing some research for the Retro Wrestling Rewind podcast. She's like, okay. She'll go to wrestling. But, that's the one thing I love about my wife.
My wife are going to, and my daughter are going to WWE Evolution. So,
we're definitely going to cover that and, talk about the history of women's professional wrestling. But
and how Fabulous Moolah is a pimp. It's a true story. Allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, is that a rumor and innuendo?
No, that's pretty legitimate. Right? I mean, her daughter says so. So
I mean, we'll find out about that. But
is Fabulous Moolah a pimp? Find out on the next. No, I was kidding.
So folks, normally we tease about what we're going to cover next week, but what?
I think we should surprise them.
We're going to actually surprise you. We're going to actually put a poll up on our Twitter account, the RW Rewind. We're going to put a couple of different things, and if we like
Halloween Havoc 95.
What you pick, as long as it's not covering the Yeti and the Dungeon of Doom, we may cover it. So, for the great Alex G, I am David Fine. Of course, you can log on to retrowrestlingrewind.com and hear and look at all the information about us. You can learn about us. You can find out about the rabbit holes. Oh yeah, that's actually another thing that we need to talk about in the very near future, the rabbit holes of professional wrestling that we've gone down. Because I found myself today on a rabbit hole of Mid-South Wrestling, just researching the Midnight Express, researching the old things.
That means we have to do the Last Stampede then at some point.
We're definitely going to do that. But like I said, for the great Alex G, I am David Fine. We'll see you back here next Wednesday when we push you over that hump that we like to call Hump Day, and to the other side of the week, all the way down to the weekend. We will see you back here next week.